Okay, we're on. Good evening. Welcome to the Sherborn Board of Selectmen meeting of January 16th, 2014. We welcome you all. As we normally do, we'll have David read the agenda draft here, please.
Thank you. First, we'll vote to approve or amend the agenda and add topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance. Then a public comment period, and then Dover Sherborn Regional School Intermunicipal Agreement, and the superintendent here is to talk about that. And an estimated time of 6:40. Director of CM&D and a resident will be in to talk about a tree removal. Then Chief Richard Thompson, use of the Sowen Street entrance to the police station. And then acceptance of various Sherborn Business Association grants. And then we'll look at the 2015 budget and the annual town meeting articles. And then at 7:30, Conservation Commission budget and warrant article. Elder housing budget, council on aging budget. Then we have time for a town administrator report, selectmen reports, approval of selectmen minutes, approval of the warrant, and set the next meeting date.
Okay, great. The change I have to the agenda I'm looking at, we were going to remove the executive session. We don't have a need for that. And also, I wanted to amend the time. I see that we have a slot of 7:35 ahead of 7:30. I think we'll just change that to 7:25. Okay, so any other amendments to the agenda, gentlemen?
Because Monday is Martin Luther King's Day, I happen to bring with me Martin Luther King's speech, I Have a Dream. So if there's any pause in the action where we have to wait for somebody and you need a filler.
That's a great filler.
I've cut it down to basically the opening and the closing and left out about 80% of it in the middle. But the opening and the closing are pretty good stuff.
Great, that'll be
So
a
if you
great
want me to read
add.
it.
Sure.
Anywhere in the agenda, we may get to it sooner than later. Any other amendments, gentlemen? I'll take a motion to accept the agenda then as amended. Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Great. Off we go now to public comment, if there's any public comment. I see no public comment. I'll add one comment. I got to hug a fella yesterday, and it was a big deal for me. It was Tom Twining. I got to visit Tom Twining, and he's home after nearly a year worth of fighting things you cannot imagine. And he was the same Tom, exuberant, full of life, spoke the same way. It was wonderful. Sorry. I did bring my big budget book with me and asked if he would help me with the budget review. He chose not to do that. But anyway, I was very happy to see him home, and I look forward to when he comes on into this building, and I'm sure he'll have plenty of things to say over time. So I'm looking forward to that. So that was great for me. Since we have a little bit of filler, Paul, I think if you're ready to read your Martin Luther King.
This was delivered on August 28, 1963, from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. And there's no way I can do it the way he did it, but just cut me off when...
Do your best.
50 years ago, a great American, in whose symbolic shadow we stand, signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of captivity. But 100 years later, we must face the tragic fact that the Negro is still languishing in the corners of America society and finds himself in exile in his own land. So we have come here today to dramatize an appalling condition. I say to you today, my friends, that in spite of the difficulties and frustrations of the moment, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a desert state sweltering with the heat of injustice and oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley will be exalted, every hill and mountain shall be made low, and rough places be made plains, and the crooked places, better take my glasses off to read this, will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. And if America is to be a great nation, this must come true. So let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous peaks of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from the Stone Mountain in Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain in Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. When we let freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, "Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last."
Thanks, Paul. Glad you think to do that. It's the second year I've heard that, and it means just as much the second time, and each time I bet when you read it. So thank you for that. You should probably laminate that, Paul.
It's been,
And blow it up a little, make it a little bigger.
Yeah.
so I can actually read it.
Yeah, there you go. That's great. All right, we still have a few minutes. How about we deal with the warrant? We have a very short warrant. It's $22,248.11, and it's warrant number 29.
And I hear the good news is that soon we will be going to bi-weekly.
That's right.
In February.
That's right. That's exciting. So I'll take a
Everybody's
motion to
to be
approve
Sure,
that
I
warrant.
did not review that, but if you're telling me it passes
Well,
your
David's
muster, it would
reviewed
pass
it,
my
and I
muster.
think it's a typical standard thing. Might have a little snow and ice in it, right? So, but it's one of the
All right.
smallest ones I've seen. So we have a
Moved.
and seconded.
Second.
All in favor? Great. Sign that off. Yeah, that'll be great to get to the 2-week cycle as opposed to the weekly cycle. And while we're waiting, I read something the other day, Paul, that you have decided to run again for this this spot. I don't know whether you're crazy or but good for you. That's great. Here we have you putting all this time in, and you want to come back and do it some more. I think that's great. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Good luck. Go get them.
Any opposition?
I don't know of any, but
I got 13 write-in votes a few years ago.
you did? Good for you. Good for you. All right, well, we still have a couple more minutes. How about we talk about upcoming meeting agenda? So next week's agenda, we have a few budget items I think I just saw on the agenda. And
Police, fire, CMD, planning board.
police, yep, fire, CM&D, and planning board on, for the budget review aspects of the agenda. I don't know, David, do you have any thoughts of any other items that, because I know Diane's talking about trying to put the agenda together tomorrow, given the upcoming holiday and so forth, and,
Yeah, we have a draft on my desk.
perfect. All right, well, that's the meaty stuff, so that'll be good. I'm sure I'll add in the budget model and that sort of thing as well, typical thing, and I'll keep my fingers crossed on that. All
I
right.
did not hear from Department of Revenue today.
Oh, on the free cash, but that's imminent.
Yeah.
Great. Do you have any other things to add under the town administrator report, David, at this stage?
No, we've just been working mostly on the budget.
Yep.
Just compiling the budget. And next Friday morning, the fire department will be featured on I think it's News Channel 25.
Really?
Where they go to different firehouses.
Next week, next Friday?
Next Friday morning, yeah.
Oh, that's Fox News, I think, right? Fox 25?
Fox 25, yeah.
Really?
So we'll give you more details on exactly what time that's
Oh,
going.
that's great. I think they bring donuts and coffee.
That explains,
Why they're doing it? Yeah.
no, that explains the donuts in the kitchen. Because those
Oh.
are left over from the event this morning.
Oh, so they filmed it
Recorded.
today, or they
Yeah.
recorded it?
See,
Oh.
it's not the cops that eat donuts, it's the firefighters. See?
Did you manage to get your face into the filming
Oh,
there,
no.
Chief?
No,
You
Chief,
stayed
those are the
away.
uneaten donuts in there.
we stay away from that.
Somebody ate the other ones.
You guys are fit, is that what you're trying to say? Yeah.
That's right. I think it was
All right.
Diane, where'd she go?
She's eating some donuts.
All right, well, I know you're waiting for one other person, so we'll keep waiting. And a couple of minutes?
Couple more minutes and then.
Absolutely. But it's good to see you here, Steve.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here.
And we'll introduce everybody, I guess, once you. Thank you. Thank you, Dave.
You want to do a budget?
How about this? I'll talk about, since we're on the topic, I'll do the lead-in, the 725 piece. So when we get to budgets, since, I don't know, David, are we gonna have budget makers here in the time slots?
Tonight,
One or more? Yeah, tonight?
we were hoping they
Yeah,
were
so,
going to be showing.
so we'll get to the detailed budgets with the budget makers when they get here.
Excuse me, I just talked to Karen Jewell. She's scheduled for tonight, but she's too sick to come in,
Okay.
so.
But we might carry the ball and whatnot.
I
be
can
able
give you
to-
some break.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be good. So I don't envision myself being supportive of approval of budgets. You know, last year Paul, when we did that all-day Saturday, which was January 5th, we had done, and we took as many as we could and we approved them. The reason I'm not quite there yet is because we don't have a model
Right.
for the overall thing. And for me, it's important to see the overall big picture, as well as the picture for the selectmen's budgets in total, of which these are a portion, before saying yay or nay, just in case there's some alterations that we think need to be done. So,
I'm with you on that. I don't see how you do it piecemeal like that.
yeah. But, so that's all I really want to do. If we had the model in this little 725 section, that's what we'd be touching on. So I have no sense where we're at overall as a town, nor do I have a bit of a sense, and you can speak to that, David, about the selectmen's budgets. It sounds like we're a little bit above, we're a bit above advisory's guidelines, still to work out or substantiate the rationale for what's being above.
Right, under the selectmen budgets, the request came in about 5% over the FY14 appropriation. So advisory had, their 1.4% was about 60,000 that they were allowing. So we were quite a bit above that with the first pass. So we've taken some other passes at those budgets today, and it looks about 2.8% over.
Which is about $50,000, is that right? Or,
No, it's
60.
It's like 112. If 1.4%
Oh.
is 60, then 2.8% is,
over, so you're still, oh, I thought you said you were 50 over.
He's an extra
downstairs.
60 over, it sounds like.
yeah. So
You're extra 60 or an extra 112?
this was over the FY14 appropriation. Over the
Okay, not their
over the guideline, we're about 55 over.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
that's
what
what I
I'm
was saying.
interested in. Okay.
So I think it looks pretty good so far.
All right, so you're going to keep working at trying to find 55?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm not making the cut. We'll discuss it together. I'll come in and say, this is how much they're over. This is what it would take to get down to that, and let you guys decide, you know, do you want to give up this?
But our
or do you
gui-
want to take that to?
Yeah, keeping in mind our guidance was 1.4% for the overall selectmen's budget.
Right.
So some might be over, some might be under,
Right.
depending on basically where you thought it ought to go and how we
Yeah.
concurred with that.
Yeah,
right?
so you can't really approve the budgets until
Okay,
after.
we see
Seeing
that.
them all.
And David, these are only expense budgets, right? We're not, the departments that have revenue too, we're not netting that out when we do this calculation.
No, you mean like the building
Building
inspector?
department or whoever, yeah.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
no. But we should be bringing that information in
Right.
so that you can see those fees.
Yeah, that-
I mean,
that
some
would be
some of
part
that's
the
in here,
model.
but yeah.
That would be part of the model, that's right.
But that also bears on how much of an increase we can absorb too. If it was a, you know, if we're gonna drop off on revenue from some of these departments, it's hard to raise costs.
Right, and if we have, if we can show that say the revenue due to the building inspector is going up X amount, but his budget is not, then that's freed up for you somewhere else too,
Right.
or offsetting somewhat,
Right.
something else.
Right. All right. But nonetheless, the conversation we'll have about these is good for us, and it's good for the community to get a sense of
Yeah.
where their money's going. And I would argue bulk of tonight's theme is spending other people's money, so.
Yeah, and I think we're all wringing our hands to see that model.
Yes.
And how far off is that?
Well, advisory is meeting on it on the 22nd, so it's sometime between now and the 22nd.
Okay.
It will
The
have
model
to be-
draft will come from the town accountant.
Yeah,
And there was some question whether it's advisory's model or not. And I've always, even when I was on advisory, I've always been of the position that it's the town's model,
right.
which is a good tool, useful tool for all involved.
Right.
and
So
especially
as soon
advisory.
as, she's promised me, as soon as it's done, it will be to us at the same time it goes to advisory, so.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Well, I spoke to Mary Wolf today for a bit, just making sure we're pulling oars in the same direction, and I think we are, so. that's
Yeah,
good.
we went through a number
And
of
she's
items
spent
yesterday.
time with you, yeah.
Spent the afternoon with me.
So, that's good. All right. Well, what do you think? You still want to wait? You're good to come up, take a seat, whoever wants to take a seat? Particularly if you have much to say. And so we're welcoming Superintendent Stephen Bliss and Chair of the Regional School Committee, Richard Robinson. Also in attendance, we have Claire Graham, one of my favorite school committee members at the
Do you
region.
have favorites?
Well, Richard's one of my favorites,
Okay,
too.
all right, I just wanted to make sure.
Michael Lee's not here, so I don't know if he's one of my favorites. And I like all the ones from Dover.
There you go.
So how's that?
So it's really just Lee, and he's not here.
Yeah, exactly. If he was here, he'd be a favorite. So how about this, Steve? If I just tell you kind of what we're dealing with and where I'm at,
Sure.
and then whatever input or reactions you may have, unless you want something specific to do. But basically, first of all, I apologize for, again, for being a slacker about getting that onto our agenda. But we did want to really, and I certainly did want to get smart about the issues so that we can give it proper, deliberation here as well. And it is a multi-year effort to get to where we're at today. And the purpose of this is to come up with an intermunicipal agreement between the towns, which slightly pulls it off of the regional agreement in terms of how we pay for capital items that the region is going out to acquire. And so under this year, the region is going to bring forth about 360,000, give or take.
Correct.
In total of capital items that you're going to be dealing with.
Right.
And the objective is to have the towns pay for it in different manners, perhaps. And so in Dover's case, they have a bunch of free cash, and they want to, rather than see the region bond this acquisition of capital items, they'd rather see, they'd rather be able to pay out of free cash for their portion of it. Versus us, we need to continue to bond it. And so that's, at least for the time being, what we see in the foreseeable future of the need to go out to bond items and do debt exclusion override. So this agreement has been dealt with and evaluated. The way, where I'm at, and I don't know where my fellow gents are at, but I'll say 5 or 6 things. How's that?
Sure.
One, I'm a little disappointed in the Department of Revenue, who hasn't taken a stand on the validity of this. They haven't objected to it, and there are other communities that are doing it, and as a result, I just make that statement. It doesn't hold me back from moving forward.
Correct.
We do see that the bond counsel for both the region also serves as the bond counsel, as I understand it, for the town. He has provided an opinion to the region. It seems to me important that he provides an opinion likewise to the town of Sherborn directly.
Okay.
That this is a good thing, that it's okay to do this. There was a question of the method of cost allocation, and I'm, again, because we're spending other people's money, I would only be comfortable if the cost allocation followed the regional agreement capital cost allocation method. Granted, in this situation, the interest cost isn't being distributed, it's just the cost of the, it's the principal cost of the items that's being split, but still split under that, because the methodology is slightly different. And if we used the operating cost portion of allocation, it would be unfavorable to Sherborn.
Correct.
So that's one thing. I would want to be sure that we stick to either an annual or ideally a project-specific basis, i.e. that this is not open-ended. We're dealing with this particular $360,000 capital acquisition on this intermunicipal agreement. We're establishing a precedent under this intermunicipal agreement to follow going forward, but some items might be best suited that the region does it and bond it and so forth in the future. So not interested in anything open-ended. I think we had some edits to the wording to ensure that it's all subject to annual town meeting and I think approval at the polls of a debt exclusion override.
That was the language that I added.
That you had suggested.
I thought it was
I
acceptable.
thought it was.
I think it's accepted.
Yeah, and I thought it was
yes.
incorporated
Yeah.
into the latest draft.
Yeah, it's into a draft. I just don't know who's got what drafts.
Yep, yep.
I've gotten confused. So those are really the main things that I need to be able to be supportive of that. And I've checked with the treasurer. He's concurred that there's no real pulling it out. Our piece doesn't create any incremental bonding, debt service costs or otherwise. He would hold it off and bundle it with a bunch of other stuff, and so it's absorbed, so there's no real incremental cost, and he can handle the timing that might be necessary to give the funds to the region, be able to come up with the funds to the region,
And a time
do a
limit.
short-term financing of some sort. So he's comfortable and raised no issues to this process. So that's where I'm at. So I defer to my gents.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with all the questions you asked. I think it is a good idea to get Rick Manley's opinion on it. I mean, I'm new to this, and I'm just kind of figuring this out. I mentioned to you, I went through these documents and the old regional school agreement and the draft, but it occurs to me that if, or what they say, there was 300 and something thousand of, so roughly half of that is Sherborn's?
Yeah, something less, 45% or something.
Okay,
like
and
that.
so if we were to pay that out of cash, we could borrow for some other capital purpose, and it would be the same thing. It would just come out in the wash. So we're not really doing anything different other than this pins us down to
instead of paying the regional school district, we would pay this directly, and we'd pay it, we believe,
No,
through bonding.
we would reimburse the regional school district for our portion as allocated.
Right, rather than paying bonded costs from the regional school district, we would pay
That's
them.
correct.
We would pay them after we,
That's correct.
yeah.
Our financing costs would be absorbed by us directly.
So, you know, unless there's some issue here that I'm not getting, it just seems like it's a different way of allocating the same money, so
Right.
it doesn't bother me. It's-
Yeah, that's good. No, I know Paul's been paying attention to this for a number of years, so.
Yeah, I was reluctant about this, but all of the changes that I wanted to see in the agreement were made, which I very much appreciate. I did ask for, and it was agreed to, that our obligation would be contingent upon the normal appropriation process here in town. The earlier drafts that we saw just had a fixed obligation that on a certain date we were going to pay this money. And however we came up with it was our problem. If it got voted down, we still had to pay it. But that's all been changed now, so that the project doesn't go forward unless the town meeting votes it and the voters have their say at the polls. So I'm happy about that. There's a typo in paragraph 3 of I think the latest version, which I'd like to correct.
Sure, we'll have that corrected.
It's in line 6 of paragraph 3. It's got the Sherborn 2013 annual town meeting referenced, and that was good from last year's model, but we're actually labeling this year's town meeting as 2014.
That was the exemplar that was sort of begun last year, shall we say,
Yeah.
so we'll make sure. Thank you.
So with all of those, I also agree with the notion, let's try it for a project, and let's see how it works. If everything works fine, and Department of Revenue doesn't come roaring in and saying, this is all wrong and all that, we try it. If it works, then fine, we can do it again. If we run into trouble, then we have a small amount at risk. We have opportunities to fix it the next time around, whatever anybody might say is wrong with it. So I agree with Peter's thought that it should be just this one time, see how it goes. So with that, I'm ready to approve.
So I think what we do is we get Manley's opinion
Mhm.
somehow, and I'm speaking in part to David as well to make sure we follow up on that. We get that it's like Paul described. I don't know whether there needs to be something real particular about using the capital cost method of allocation. I would recommend that. And then we'll have a draft agreement, hopefully that everybody's happy with, that we can then approve to sign, so, but,
Yeah, I mean, this kind of fudges the issue. It talks about allocation in accordance with section 4 rather
Right.
than a subsection.
that's right.
And we really should have the subsection
Yeah.
specified.
Yeah,
Absolutely, we need to reference subsection
4C
4B.
or
4B in the
B, I
regional
think.
agreement speaks to the
That's the
apportionment
capital cost.
formula
Yeah.
concerning capital, right?
right, right.
Just for the record, and for our viewers, the reason why
B,
I'm
yeah.
supporting this is that it respects our neighbor, Dover, and allows them to do what they want. And with the language that we've put in here and massaged over the last year, I think Sherborn is protected. So if we can accommodate our sister community and not harm the town, and at the same time assist the region, because you all seem to be wanting this, then I feel like I can support this. It makes sense from a public policy point of view to allow communities the option of doing whatever their voters say is the best way for them to finance their projects.
We certainly would never want to put the town of Sherborn or its taxpayers in a precarious situation. We therefore thank the Board of Selectmen for bringing issues to our attention that warranted some further research and scrutiny, and hopefully we will emerge with a better product and tool in the process.
So I think what we will do tonight because I know that it impacts the budgeting process that you go through, that we would approve the substance of what we're talking about here, and then at a later date, we'll have a piece of paper to sign.
Right, because we'll get to work on refining all of the.
Yeah.
Well, are we gonna vote it in concept?
Yeah,
Because I would still wanna withhold a final vote until we'd seen the actual language.
Well,
I
not
totally
just the
agree.
final language. Peter's made a good point that he wants to see the numbers.
Yep.
So at some point, I trust Peter completely with regard to numbers, so you need to
Oh, I'm
reduce
sure
it
they'll
down.
do the allocation.
Actually,
properly.
what we have to pay, using the formulas that he's said should be the right formula. But the form of the agreement is that the total cost of the project will be $ blank is in the, here.
Yeah.
I do want to see it filled in, and I do want to hear from Peter that that's the right number.
It's a blank check, Mr.
That's a lot of pressure on me,
That's
Paul.
putting pressure on you. But I know you're a
I'll pay attention on that one.
stickler for the detail, and this is.
Yeah, I don't like
I'm not worried
stuff
about
with
that.
blanks in it either, so.
Yeah. Yeah, so but unless you, I mean, I just want to make sure they don't walk away thinking, okay, are we at risk here on this budgeting process? Minor risk, but I think you can
Yeah.
see we're all
Yeah.
on board with this.
We don't want Dover to secede from the union either.
Yeah, that's right.
I think we've heard what we need to hear for tonight.
Okay.
If you guys want to take a formal vote, once
I
the
just wanted to
contract,
do it for your
once
comfort
the
level,
IMA
that's
is
Right.
dotted and crossed, absolutely.
That's
Well, I'll move that we approve the concept that's been presented to us in its latest revised version, subject to an opinion from bond counsel, satisfaction with regard to the numbers, and presentation of a final version with no blanks.
Which incorporates Mr. Caruso's changes.
Yes.
Great, I'll second that. Any further discussion?
Well, it also incorporates the typo that I brought to your attention.
And
We
Mr.
had the wrong
Durensis'
year.
change.
Got it.
Okay, seconded, so it's moved and seconded, all in favor? Great. Does that make you happy?
It does.
Very.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you for coming, appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you for your
Thanks
patience.
for coming.
Yeah, thanks, and again,
I know it's been
don't
trying.
forget some of these
You know,
keys are on the floor, looks like that's
Those are
what I
mine.
might
I
like,
won't
so
be
you
going
can
far.
leave them, so.
I know you all have been working on this for a long time, and
Yeah.
I know that we have had so many questions. So thank you for your patience with us.
Thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I think part of it
Thanks
is
for-
we didn't we never had to sit down and focus on this
That's right,
until
and
tonight.
I was delaying,
Oh.
trying to find out stuff, and
Yeah.
and as I say, I apologize.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Good.
Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Get to it sooner, so. Steve still talks to me, he doesn't poke at me in various meetings we attend, although he could.
Thank you. We spend a lot of time together.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks again. All right, so now we're up to our 6:40.
Ed Wagner,
Bob Merchants is
Ed
not here.
and Bob, I don't see Bob here.
is he
So-
coming?
far
Well,
as
it's
we
not
know,
quite
he's-
6:40, so maybe.
So we'll
we
give him a
should-
few minutes, absolutely.
But why not do the the elderly housing?
I'm waiting for Joe.
Oh,
Why don't
okay.
we accept some grants? Can we do
Can we
that?
do the grants? Do we need, are people coming for these grants?
Yes.
So,
We got to front load all these hearings so we have a big crowd and we get stuff done. Next time we just, have people in the room the whole time. It'd be great. Not for them, but for us.
all right. Well, and I'm not gonna push Chief Thompson's thing into early.
I can
So-
briefly
We have
talk
minutes
about
or anything?
Council on Aging.
Oh,
Oh, we can do the Council on Aging.
Okay.
Let's do that. All right. So here's what I was gonna do to the budget makers from my chair, due to the budget makers. What I was gonna suggest is they give us an overview of what they do and what their key budget drivers are, just to help the voters know where their money's going, that sort of thing. And so I was planning to do that for elder housing. So otherwise, David, I'll throw it your way. Maybe you can give us
All
a
right.
little overview.
Just a quick rundown. Their request for
Elder housing or council?
Council on Aging.
Council on Aging, right?
Well, I'm just giving Kitty a little forearming her, forewarning her.
Making sure you're awake.
Well,
And if needed, we'll have them in another night
yeah,
so that they can have their.
yep.
Their FY15 request was $100,100 for salaries. Their FY14 appropriation was $99,000, so it's up about $1,000. The expenses, their request increased from $22,950 to $25,650 for a total budget request of $125,750. And that breaks out to about 3% over FY14. And the advisory, as we know, is the 1.4%. So it's only 1.6% or about $1,980 over the advisory guideline. And 1,000 of that 1,900 I know is towards the purchase of a laptop. So it's not a lot of things being added into that budget.
Yeah.
And our senior population has grown. from one
Yeah.
year to
The
another.
demands, yeah.
So
Yeah.
to take in sort of an artificial number and say everybody has to get 1.4%, even though the senior population has grown by more than that, seems to me to be putting form over substance.
Yeah,
So
no,
in
I'm with you. I guess the way I would do this, David, is it's helpful to know the overall, as you describe it, the salaries and then the expense. That's good. We don't need to get into too much detail unless any of us have particular questions. But what I want to say is three things maybe. One, I just want to keep reinforcing, even though advisory's guidance is not 1.4% for this line item or this department, it's 1.4% for all selectmen's budgets. Now, you can then
Right.
say, I want to use all that, and maybe that's what you're doing, but just, it's not big dollars that we're talking about in terms of the overage beyond, if you use the 1.4% as the strict guidance for that department. Paul's point's absolutely right. I was going to ask them what the senior population stats are this year, but seniors are defined, I remember last year they told me, seniors are defined as 60 and over, and there were 910 last year. I suspect there are more this year. The other thing that I was going to say is that there's a huge volunteer army active in what these folks do to supplement the dollars that get paid for this budget. And as an example, I know we did the bake sale at the holiday fair there.
Which you won, you sold
No,
more than I did.
actually, I think you won it this year. You were wearing the Santa hat, and I think you won it this year, Paul. But that was a lot of fun. But a lot of people did a lot of baking of brownies and cookies and all of that. And that was one of their major fundraisers for the Council on Aging, Friends of the Council on Aging. But anyway, it's a great group. They're very active. I'll just read their, when I talk about what's the overview, what do they do? It's the mission of the Council on Aging to provide advocacy and support systems for senior citizens of Sherborn by working with them toward the ultimate goal of maintenance, independence, and improvement of their quality of life. That's a great statement. That's where the money's going to pay for this. And it's a limited staff. The hours of the office aren't open, but they're doing stuff all over town all the time. And it's as Paul says, it's dealing with a large and continuing to grow segment of the population. And I haven't heard a bad thing about what they do.
Yeah, they continually look for other funding sources too,
Yeah.
joint programs with the library,
Yeah.
Sherborn EMS. They've received 4 grants from, it's Bay Path Elder Services, Metro West Healthcare, Sherborn Business Association, Friends of Sherborn COA, and those are about $25,000 in non-general fund money that they.
So I've seen this budget a million times, but Mike, you're looking at it for the first time.
I am.
So I'll love to
All
hear the
right.
questions
Yeah,
you may have.
general question, which is not specific to this budget. It's more of a format question. We get the fiscal year 2014 appropriation. We're more than halfway through fiscal 2014. It would probably be helpful to have some idea how closely they're tracking the budget. And I know that may involve asking the accountant for more information, which is burdensome perhaps on staff. But it's helpful to have that in front of us because and I will use this one as an example, there are a number of categories here where there was an appropriation last year that was either much bigger than the one the year before, actual expenditures or appropriation in a category that didn't exist the year before. And so it makes you think, is there an over-appropriation on anything from 14, and then we're building 15 based on 14. So
Right.
that's,
Ideally, between that FY14 appropriation and that FY15 requested, there should be a number of different columns. One would be the actual FY14 year-to-date.
yeah,
And then another column for projected, where they actually project they're going to be by the end of the year.
those would both be very good columns.
Yeah, and then
Yeah,
you can actually
yeah, I
see
mean,
the-
when you think about it, the last financial information we've seen of the town is as of
13.
September 30th.
Yeah, it's the, well,
Right,
but,
we
but
got-
also it's the end of 13
And-
in
and
this,
the
in this
13.
book.
Yes,
Right.
that's right. So, but even just having, through the end of the year, I mean, all of this stuff comes together. It's a lot of work, I know, but it's also critical times to have that type of information.
And then just, and you explained one thing, but there are a couple of new requests this year that there are no columns for previous year. One is the $1,000 of equipment, which you said was a laptop. And the other is $1,500 for COA drop-in support. And I noticed there are actually much higher entries for expenditures in prior years on that item, but it looks like it wasn't appropriated in 14 and it wasn't appropriated in 13. And I'm wondering, has something changed? Is there a realization that it should have been appropriated and now we're fixing that, or what's the reason for that?
I think, well, I don't have an answer. We'll have
Okay.
to have her in.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a question based on the numbers. I have
If
no
it's a
idea what
programmatic thing, then
Yeah.
we need her to
We,
answer.
we didn't appropriate for it in 13, but we spent $1,300 on it.
In
And the drop-
13, yeah.
And the drop-in program's an important one, and the request is for just $200 more than was actually spent in this current year.
Right, but we didn't have an appropriation last year either, so presumably it was important last year too, but for some reason, we didn't feel a need to appropriate it. So the question is, what's changed? I'm not saying I'm against it, I'm just curious as to what's changed on that.
There is, if you look at the next line, the bus tours, that had an appropriation of $1,250 in FY13 that wasn't used. Sometimes they
So that
offset
could-
things.
So that could be, it was just switched that year, but now this year, the appropriation would be for both bus tours and drop-in support, but not for film rental or printing, so.
Yeah, I'd want to talk to Karen and just ask
Yeah.
her, is that,
Okay.
was something charged in the wrong place or put in the wrong place, or is there, were they offsetting those?
She would be here, but she's sick.
Right,
Just
she's
for-
ill, yeah.
We don't want her here if she's sick. She should be resting and not getting other people sick.
Okay,
Yeah,
you're good?
it's great.
All right, well, that's good. So we covered one of these, and I
Right.
see, Bob, you're here, so that would be great.
So I
we'll get
didn't
the-
adjust anything on that budget, knowing
Understood.
that the small amount would probably be eaten somewhere else.
Yep.
or offset somewhere else.
Yep.
Yeah, with the caveat from what Peter said before, when we see the whole model and how much
Yeah,
all these little pieces total up,
Right.
then we'll finalize things.
great. All right, so Bob, you're here. We could have you come up to the table with the microphone. That's what we do to everybody. We sometimes refer to as the hot seat. I have your email.
Yep.
Okay?
We've read everything.
We've read a bunch of stuff. And welcome. You've asked to be with us. We're dealing with, and just what I thought I'd do is sum up, if it's okay with you, my understanding of where we're at.
Sure.
Of what I know of what transpired and why, where I've taken a position, and then hear what you have to say and see what these guys have to say. We'll see if we can figure it out. We're all in the same community here. So anyway, what happened sometime in late June, I guess it was the Friday before, but I'm just giving the facts. We have I guess one way to call it is a disputed invoice, or something here. So, back in a Friday afternoon in June, the June of the weekend before the July 4th holiday week, you noticed a tree looking precarious on your property. You called Ed Wagner our CM&D director, who, in my view, can be construed as a subject matter expert on trees around town here, absent tree warden. We do have a tree warden that works for Ed. But anyway, he came out, quickly looked at your tree. From what I understand, he said, not sure, it wasn't clear whose property the tree was on, and therefore whose financial responsibility it was. But he also didn't think that the tree was failing in an imminent nor dangerous manner at the time. These, again, the facts that I understand.
I mean, if he's here.
He's here and he
can speak to it.
That's
Yeah.
right.
I can't speak for him, so.
Right, I'm just giving the overview. And so then he said he'll figure that out and come back on the Monday or Tuesday of the next week, identify where the
Well, if
ownership
do you-
was, and
do you-
also address the tree.
Do you want me to explain how I saw it happen, or do
Oh,
you
no,
do you
I
want to
do in a
finish?
minute. Yeah. So anyway, so that's what happened, and in the meantime, you obviously thought differently or understood maybe that you have a different bit of the facts. But you called, Ed said, the tree's not gonna fall down, he doesn't think the tree's gonna fall down. He'll figure out whose tree it is, first part of the following week, Monday, and then deal with it accordingly. He also, but then it appeared you thought the tree looked more precarious. You called in a tree specialist that you deal with on your property. He thought it should come down, and you engaged him to
He
start.
thought it should be stabilized, yes.
Right, so you engaged a tree specialist to deal with this tree in a manner that he thought should be done. And then Monday, the Ed came out, said, I'll bring my crew out to deal with the tree, determined that it was on the town's right-of-way. But your guy was already working on it or something. Whatever was happening, it's not clear. But anyway, your tree folks finished the job, took the tree down.
That's correct.
And invoiced the town. From my perspective, because of the lack of clarity or the confusion, but also because we didn't engage the tree person, it was my view that the tree person should be invoicing you, and then you can seek reimbursement.
Right.
Based on the facts, my position was I was hoping that David would get together with you and try and work something out. It seemed that you're, based on the way, what I understand for what the town would incur for a cost to remove such a tree, it was something less than what the invoice was showing. So it seemed to me a
I
fair
guess I
thing
would
that there
say
was confusion.
that's an unknowable fact.
Just basing it on my subject matter expert in the community, okay? So anyway, that's where I'm at. It didn't seem to me that the town, I'm charged with spending other people's money.
Of course.
And so it seemed a fair way to try to negotiate, you guys negotiating something. Oftentimes you get to the middle point, or maybe there's some other point. So that's about where I'm at. In this process of preparing for tonight, I did ask, it turns out there's a whole litany of tree removal regulations at the state and the town. So I've become more educated on that. I won't go there for now, but it just, there's a whole bunch of
I'm actually well aware of a lot of those regulations and very careful and respectful of them.
Right.
I have a lot of frontage along a scenic road.
Yep.
And therefore I'm aware of what you can and cannot do. And, this tree is not a tree that I would be allowed to take down myself under normal circumstances.
Right.
First of all, as it turns out, the tree didn't belong to me. We didn't know that at the time.
Right.
But I guess a few corrections. When Ed came out that afternoon, most of the conversation was he felt reasonably strongly, and it was a courteous conversation. In other words, let me go through the litany a little bit. The night before, there'd been a big thunderstorm on Thursday night. I went somewhere, I came back. When I came back, I didn't notice it going out, but I came back in the afternoon. I see this gigantic tree. It's a double oak.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And, this big around both pieces of the double oak. The piece that it was splayed like this, almost 45 degrees in both directions.
Yeah.
145 degrees over Lake Street, over the wires on the opposite side of Lake Street.
Yep.
The other piece was 45 degrees back over
Or your
my
property,
field, my
yeah.
property, my stone wall, whatever. That, the tree that had come down had not broken off. It had uprooted. So you got a double oak,
Yeah.
had uprooted. There's a gigantic hole underneath the tree that's 45 degrees out over Lake Street at that point, okay?
Yep.
It scared the hell out of me when I drove. I mean, I literally, when I drove under it, accelerated because I didn't want to be under it for any period of time.
Yep.
Got home, called the town. Fortunately, I had Ed's telephone number. I called him on his cell phone. I said, we got a problem here. We got a public safety issue. I said, this is really, really dangerous. It's Friday afternoon. It's 3:30. He actually was available, came right over, very responsive. The conversation we had, I don't recall him saying this is not dangerous or it is dangerous. The conversation was, well, who needs to take care of it, right? In other words, is this my problem or the town's problem?
Yep.
He felt very strongly at that point that it was my tree. Strongly. In other words, it wasn't, not sure, I'll have to check. It was, I'm not 100% sure, but I really think that's your tree. That was the conversation we had, and I don't know whether he'll remember it differently than I do, but that's how I remember
Yep.
the conversation.
Yep.
So he said something along the lines of, you know, we'll be able to find out at some, you know, on Monday or whatever.
Right.
And my feeling about it was that it was really dangerous. So thinking that it was my tree, I called the tree company,
Yep.
thinking it was my tree
Yep.
and that I was going to have to pay. But I called them then because I was afraid. I mean, you're headed into a summer weekend on Lake Street where kids are on bicycles and people, and I mean, it's a traffic jam. And in fact, they started to take the tree down. They stabilized the tree, and they came and they said, we can't finish taking the tree down because there's too much traffic on Lake Street.
Yeah.
So I acted in what I thought was the best interests of the community to take it down immediately, thinking it was my tree and I was going to have to pay for it. I wasn't happy about paying for it, but it is what it is, right?
Right.
So I was acting in good faith, okay? Now, I called the tree people. They came out, and in fact, it's a guy who lives in town here, a guy named Rolf Briggs. He's a resident.
Uh-huh.
And I called him, and he was, you know, I was kind of in a panic because I didn't have anyone, you know, it's not like I could get out there with a chainsaw and cut it down. He was willing to come over because he did other work for us. In fact, I think he's done work in the past for the town as well. And not currently, but I think historically that company's done work for the town. He came over, he looked at it, he said, yeah, that is really dangerous. It needs to be stabilized. I said, fine, take it down. He said, well, I don't think I can get a crew here right now. We'll do the best we can. He got a crew out there at, like, I don't know what time, very early Saturday morning. They roped the tree up. They took a lot of the crown out because the crown was hanging over the wires on the opposite side of Lake Street. They got the crown down. They tied back the trunk and stabilized it, and they said, we have to stop because there's just too much traffic. We can't shut traffic down on Lake Street long enough to clean it all up. So they did, you know, they made it safe. They left. They came back on Monday morning. They were 2/3, 3/4 of the way through finishing the job when I got a call from Ed, and Ed said, stop the work. I said, stop the work? They're almost done. He said, well, that's a town tree. I said, I mean, by the time I send these guys home and you bring a new tree guy out, we're going to have spent a lot more money than we need to, right? Does that make sense to you? That if you take one crew off a job and you then hire a new crew to come with, you know, a half hour of work left, that's not a sensible economic decision. So I said, no, we're just going to do the last 30
Finish
minutes
it
and we're
up.
going to finish and we're going to
Yep.
be done with it. So that's basically what happened. There was one thing. I did call John Higley, the chairman of the planning board.
Yeah.
After Ed left, and it said to me, you know, I think that's your tree and you have to deal with it. I wasn't happy about hearing that, obviously.
Right.
Mostly what I wanted, I mean, what I really wanted, and I think Ed will back me up on this, is I wanted the town to take down the tree right away, and then we'd figure out who owned it.
Right.
Which to me, I'm good for it. If you take it down and it's my tree, I'm good for it.
Right.
And I guess now I feel like I took it down, and I'm expecting my town to be good for it. It wasn't my tree. I acted in the interest of public safety. Peter, what would you do if you thought there was an issue of public safety like I did?
Well, I depend on the town. See, so that's where I get hung up, is because I'm basing it on, in part, the information I get, in that it's slightly different than what you're describing in terms of, gee, it doesn't look like it's the town subject matter expert,
By the way,
our employee.
I called NSTAR as well to ask them to take it down.
No, and so I think the police, the police were informed, and they called NSTAR and all of that. NSTAR apparently doesn't rush out to these things, which surprised me.
Stunned me.
Yes, I
Stunned
was
me that
surprised.
they did.
It was a 28-day window or something.
Yeah,
It was crazy.
yeah.
But in any event, so based on the town subject matter expert, our guy that we pay to deal with this stuff, reports that he didn't think it was a major problem. I mean, and I'm just, those are my words, okay? So that it wasn't in need of having to come down right away. So based on that, now as a homeowner, I might be less than happy with that answer, particularly looking at what you were looking at. I can understand that. But again, I'm up here. I got to deal with what the guy says to us.
So,
Could I make a
And
comment?
absolutely.
I have a somewhat different view of this, in part because I'm a lawyer. And to me, I don't want to see anybody injured on our streets. And generally, around the state, we have a problem with property owners not taking care of trees on their property. And a lot of people, if you read the newspapers and so on, are at risk from falling branches and so on because property owners don't act. Here we have somebody who did act, who actually did the right thing, and by so doing protected the citizens of Sherborn, the traveling public, and all of the stuff about where the tree was actually located, how long it took someone to figure it out. All of that is good background, but to me, it doesn't change the result. The tree needed to come down. We had somebody who went ahead and did it. He acted reasonably. He acted in good faith. I would pay the bill and be done with it.
Understood. Just want to, go ahead.
I'm confused about one thing, and Ed, I've seen your crews, or maybe before you, town crews come along and they'll trim branches and limbs, and NSTAR will trim branches and limbs from my trees that are hanging over the road, because that's the town's business. So if a tree, even if the base of the tree is on Mr. Murchison's property, isn't the part that sticks over the road the town's anyway? I mean, I'm confused, I guess, why that didn't come up in the initial discussion, that was something the town could take care of because it was hanging over the town road, unless there's some reason that you can't do that.
The way the law reads, it's where the base of the tree, where the property is. And if, say, I have a tree that's clearly on my property, and it's leaning towards Sergeant Tedstone's property, if the tree was to fall onto Sergeant Tedstone's property, it would actually be his responsibility to pick up the tree. Now, if Sergeant Tedstone came to me and said, Ed, that tree is really bad, I'm giving you notice that the tree is bad, it's now my responsibility. When I did respond that day, the tree definitely needed to come down at a point in time. I didn't feel it would be coming down immediately. We did differ in that opinion. There was initial confusion, and you're absolutely correct that initially I looked at it, I was like, yeah, it's definitely your tree. But then when I looked further down and we were looking at the wall and trying to figure that out, and then whether or not the wall was there, that just threw it off and I didn't know whose it was.
It did look
but-
like it was my tree.
But again, I didn't give that a thought because I didn't think that the tree was going to immediately come down. Then on Monday morning, when I got a hold of Gino, we got the plans, looked at it, and identified it as our tree. When I did show up on the scene, the crews hadn't started cutting the tree yet. They were still waiting on their detail officer. So they hadn't started the work yet. They were still working on the back.
I mean, you and I get along quite well. That's not, those aren't the facts I remember. I remember talking on the phone. I remember getting the call. In fact, I don't think you and I
Yeah, I
saw
don't, this is
each
not a
other.
court of law here.
I don't
know.
think you and
We're
I
not-
saw each other that morning. I remember talking to you on the telephone about this, that you called me on the telephone and told me to stop.
Yeah.
So I don't remember you being present
I was present. I spoke with the foreman of the crew.
before you
they-
talked to me.
Just before. And you told me that they were already there, that you wanted them to proceed. And
Anyway,
get a quick vote.
These
I remember
details
getting
don't
called.
make any difference to me.
I understand that, Paul. I understand that, Paul.
Yeah, I am.
Just add two things to what I said before. One is that the town does have laws dealing with trees, and there was a tree manual which Mike helped put together, I believe, way back then. I voted to adopt it. But one thing that was clear in that manual, and one thing that's clear in the law, is that if a tree is in imminent danger of causing a risk of injury to persons or property, it's exempt. Anybody can do whatever has to be done to save that kind of injury. So I'm not worried about the laws being violated here at all.
Well, here's where I'm at. I mean, we're hearing two different stories, slightly. And again, Ed's the subject matter expert from my perspective, and he says he doesn't think it needs to come down. Who said what, when, where, and how can be important. The other thing that I understand from Ed is if he were to remove that town tree with his crews, the cost would have been quite a bit less in your estimate. But
there's one other fact I want to add to this. We don't need to rely on Bob's judgment. We don't need to rely on Ed Wagner's judgment. The Tree Specialists, Inc., which is a pretty good outfit. They're reputable, that we've used them in the past, they're dependable. They made the judgment that it needed to come down. And they are experts here. And our tree warden was not involved at all, and Ed is not our tree warden. He knows a lot about trees, I grant him that, but it isn't that there is any other competing expert view on this.
Well, they made a judgment that when the homeowner hired them to take the tree down, the tree needed to come down. That's a little different than saying, come out and assess
No,
whether
no.
the
No,
tree
actually,
needs to
Michael,
come
that's
down.
not.
Did you ask them for an opinion? Is
No,
that
I
what happened?
asked them for an opinion about whether it was a threat to public safety.
Okay.
They thought it was.
See, understand it from my perspective. At the moment, at the time that I hired these guys, Ed had told me that he felt very strongly that it was my tree.
Understood.
And if you look at actually where it was on the ground, it really did look like it was my tree. It turns out there's an oddity in in that line
Yeah.
because of the stone wall. The stone wall pulls back, so the town right-of-way pulls back. I didn't know that. So I looked at it. I thought it was a high I wasn't hoping it was my tree, but at the time I thought it was a high probability it was my tree. Ed told me he thought it was my tree. I perceived a threat to public safety, and I did what I think is the right thing in good faith. And now I'm coming back and saying, well, now that in the light of day, and we're not in an emergency anymore, we all know that it's the town's tree. Now, as I said before, what I really wanted to have happen was for Ed to take the tree down so the threat to public safety was gone, and if it was my tree, I would reimburse the town. He was unwilling to do that
well, I think
because he had a different judgment in good faith. I'm not, this is not a
right.
dispute that.
No, we get it that everybody was acting in good faith. I don't have any
Yeah.
questions on it.
Yeah.
I mean, I see kind of competing policy concerns, going beyond this dispute. One is we can't really have homeowners making their own judgments and then
No, of
asking the
course
town to pay for it.
Of course not.
On the other hand, we live in a town with a lot of trees hanging over the road, and somehow trees hanging over the road seem to get cut sometimes, and then other times they don't get cut, and I guess I would want to think that we were cutting trees when they were a risk to safety, and I think that maybe begs the question a little, because you two disagreed at the time how much of a threat to safety it was, but I wouldn't want us to err on the side of not taking a tree down because it was on a homeowner's property if it was hanging over the street, because we cut down branches that are hanging over the street from trees on homeowners' property all the time. Either the town does or NSTAR does. So, I don't know where to go with this, but boy, you just say the word tree and there's it shows up.
Yeah. Well, I don't know where to go with it either. The third thing
by the
I
way,
added, what you just said was we do have, which surprises me, and you helped write them. You chaired the committee that wrote these things, the tree policies. So, in fact, none of those, I mean.
And I would point out that Kitty had a lot to do with that tree policy, and
There you
Thursday
go.
had a lot to do with that tree policy too.
So, anyway.
Can I add just one minor fact
Absolutely.
change? And that is that the bill that you're looking at is actually the
I know it's
tree-
$2,700 or
Yeah,
something.
it's
not the
27
whole
it's
bill.
not the whole piece. I just wanna make sure you
get
knew that. It's
I get that.
$2,700.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
That's great. So where do you gents want to go? I know,
One thought we had was, I mean, we can't just pay it, can we? We've got to put this on.
it'll go on a
budget
warrant.
somehow?
It'll go on a warrant. No, it'll come out of Ed's budget.
We have a tree cutting budget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would reimburse him for the $2,700 that it took to get that tree down, and thank him for it.
And put it on the warrant.
That would go on the warrant.
Yes.
Right. So if that's what you guys want to do, that's.
I'm comfortable doing
you're
that. I
comfortable.
mean, I know he acted in good faith. I think we've had enough discussion that
Yeah.
nobody who
plenty of
hears about
discussion.
this or is watching this is going to think that it's a good
We
idea.
didn't try hard to look out for everybody's
to make-
best
right,
interest.
to be maybe a little, less cautious than he was. I think he acted in good faith and acted reasonably, and we can.
So we'll put that on the next warrant. And
I
we
appreciate it.
made you work for it,
It's all right. It's good to get the facts out, so, anyway.
No, that's fine.
Thank you.
And I think Ed acted in good faith too. I don't.
Ed, if you had anything
Yeah.
further, now or later? No, you're good.
Just to make sure that viewers out there don't think they can go out and cut trees.
Well, that's
You
part of
did,
Mike's
there was a
point.
determination by an outsider that there was an emergency here, such an emergency that they had to tie the tree in place before they would leave to prevent it from falling. Number two, the town was involved. It wasn't something done in the dark of night. Ed was notified, he was there, was on site. So it wasn't that the town's laws and regulations were being ignored. And number three, I think at the end of the day, public safety has got a trump here.
Yeah.
To put it another way, if a branch had fallen and someone got hurt, this would be an entirely different conversation.
Could I ask the chief, not to put you on the spot, but to put you on the
You can put me on
spot,
the
public
spot.
safety when it comes to trees, because we deal with them with storms and all that sort of thing. What typically, from your perspective, because I gotta believe you or the fire department are the ultimate determination, making the ultimate determination of the safety issue.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
In the particular case that you're discussing, frankly, Ed went out, took a look at the tree. He did call us. We've got the recorded call, conversations between Ed and the desk officer.
Yep.
And then the further follow-up between the desk officer and NSTAR. And basically, Ed made it very clear over the phone that he didn't think it was an immediate threat. The officer relayed that to NSTAR. That's why NSTAR didn't come out. And the representative from NSTAR actually told the desk officer that, he asked the question, is the tree hanging on the power lines? Had the tree been hanging on the power lines, believe it or not, they would have come right
They would have come right away.
Right. So, to get to your point of question, we would defer to Ed, and even some of Ed's employees, particularly even like during storms. They go out and they assist us all the time, and they call in and say, we've got a tree that's hanging over a wire on Lake Street. You send somebody up to check it out. Typically, we'd send a police vehicle up there and/or a fire official. They take a peek and make a determination that there's not an immediate threat to the general public.
Thank you.
Yeah, and one other thing I saw in here which kind of surprised me, but maybe I'm just not familiar with it, and I'm sure it's because of a work rule, but to even call the tree warden out, it's a 4-hour
minimum.
Saturday or
On Saturday
whatever,
with
after hours.
time and a half.
He happened to be down the Cape that particular weekend.
Uh-huh.
But it's in the state law, the director of public works is by default the deputy tree warden.
Okay.
And again, as the tree warden needs to be notified before any public tree, anytime you're dealing with public tree. And in this case here, we had the discussion. I have absolutely no problem with the outcome.
Right.
Yeah, just figure if that's going to be a cost factor in other circumstances, we have to think about how we designate a tree warden so that they're not.
That's right. Yeah, but you're saying you wear the hat of deputy tree warden in that type of
Okay,
situation.
so that wasn't really
So
relevant.
We have it covered.
That was a
for
fact,
the
but it wasn't
regs.
really a relevant fact.
That's right.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, thanks a lot, Bob,
Great.
for
Thank you.
enlightening us and
Thanks
coming
for
out,
coming in.
and appreciate it.
For your time.
All right, so that brings us to a little behind. Chief Thompson. Talk about your Sawin Street entrance to the police station. And I see you brought Sergeant.
My bodyguard.
Good evening.
Absolutely one of my favorite police officers in town.
Very smart man.
Good evening. Look, I'm actually kind of glad that we had this conversation about the tree before this presentation, because a lot of key words were brought up: public safety and safety of the community. Back in November, myself and Sergeant Tesman had a conversation. Some of the officers were concerned about the traffic that goes behind the station and the issue with the narrow driveway that's at the rear of the station and the exit onto Sound Street. The reason this came to a head, so to speak, we had an incident where one of our officers was responding to a motor vehicle accident, and while the officer was coming down the back of the station towards Sound Street, a resident was coming in the opposite direction up the driveway from Sound Street, panicked, trapped the cruiser, and there was a delay in us responding. Thankfully, the incident that the officer was responding to was what we would call a minor motor vehicle accident. There wasn't any major injury. Had that been a true emergency, somebody in medical distress, there would have been a serious problem. So Sergeant Tesman came to me, we had a discussion. I contacted Ed Wagner. Me, Sergeant Tesman, and Ed Wagner went over and met with David Williams, and we had a conversation about limiting access to the rear of the station. And Dave, you can correct me if I stray from the conversation we had. I explained to David that the officers were very concerned about responding and helping people. We're in the help business. We want to get to the call. There is a major problem. It's a flawed design. That driveway at the rear of the station, it's a flawed design. I'm told that when the driveway was constructed, I don't want to touch on a tree issue again, but apparently when the driveway was constructed, it was built around the tree or a tree that was at the rear of the station. So there's a choke point at the rear of the station, and you cannot have two vehicles pass safely at that point. Additionally, the actual entrance to Sound, or the entrance from Sound Street, because it's kind of at a strange angle, it creates a problem for people entering into the driveway as well as vehicles exiting at the same time. So there's an issue there as well. So when we had this conversation with the town administrator, he agreed that we needed to address it. Originally, we talked about putting up do not enter signs. I explained to him that the officers in the union were concerned about this, and he suggested that I have them write a letter to my attention and then provide it to him. They did that, and I'd like to read that if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. To Chief Thompson from the Sherborn Police Local 158 regarding the police station parking area, date November 20th, 2013. Chief Thompson, we would like to express our ongoing safety concerns regarding the parking area directly surrounding the police station, including the Sound Street entrance. As you are aware, officers often respond to emergency calls for service directly from the police station. It is imperative that we respond to these calls safely and effectively. It is during these times, while exiting the police station parking area, officers often encounter through traffic, which is utilized in the police station parking lot as a cut-through. Due to the narrow construction of the roadway, particularly on the Sherborn Street entrance, it is extremely treacherous for two vehicles to pass one another simultaneously. This forces officers to navigate around the oncoming traffic, which poses a serious risk and liability to pedestrian traffic. This also creates a situation where cars parked in the rear lot could become damaged by a passing vehicle avoiding a crash. Another serious concern involves officers exiting the Sallyport garage door at the side of the police station. Vehicles utilizing the rear lot as a cut-through contribute to the already hazardous conditions created by limited visibility and narrow roadway in the direct vicinity of the Sallyport garage door. These conditions create potential for pedestrian accidents, which could be resolved by eliminating through traffic. These issues are ongoing and pose a serious risk to officers and the general public if we continue to allow vehicles to utilize a police parking lot as a cut-through. We know the town will recognize this risk and take appropriate action to help create safe working conditions for its employees as well as the general public. A copy of this letter is on file with the Mass Coalition of Police and the Sherborn Police Association, Local 158. So, since I at least have been the chief, when there are issues involving traffic safety, we typically go before the Traffic Safety Committee. I made the Traffic Safety Committee aware of this matter. I included the town administrator in these conversations. The town administrator suggested down the road or in the future that we look at the possibility of constructing some type of separate entrance to the town hall parking lot. He agreed that this was a safety concern. I brought all that information to the attention of the Traffic Safety Committee, and as of last night, they voted unanimously to support putting up emergency vehicle only signs at the Sherborn Street entrance and on the opposite side of the, I should say, the southwest corner of the police station.
So, thanks for that, Chief. Right now, it's got signs up that say authorized use only or something to that effect?
Yeah, and
Well, I mean,
sure.
I don't know what it says, authorized or?
Authorized vehicles only.
Vehicles only.
Correct.
So I don't even use that. I've used it twice and I felt guilty, but, so I read that and I say, I'm technically not authorized to do that. I assume it's just you guys, but I guess I'm misreading that. So this do not enter sign approach that you're describing would presumably be clearer to dopes like me that you don't want driving up and down there.
Well, my understanding and the history of that sign was explained to me by a member of the police station building committee. That apparently that sign was intended to alert people to not park at the rear of the station, which
okay,
really is.
And it's Peter Lippert.
All right, and that's in his letter
Yeah.
there, yeah.
Okay.
Well,
All right.
I was part of the process, and I helped support getting the police station built. And it was a multi-year effort. And I see a former member of the police station building committee in the back of the room. My understanding always was that was an access to the town hall, and that it was always supposed to be utilized by the public. The concern was we wanted access to the police station, we wanted access to the municipal campus, if you
Sure.
will. We were creating this campus where we have the library, where we have the town offices, and we have the police station. And with the upcoming renovations to the library, they're counting on parking that may even be some that you now think are police parking spaces. There has to be a discussion about what parking is going to go with the library that haven't been resolved yet. But for all of these municipal buildings, there needed to be more than one access. And the second access was this other access. You correctly point out that there were, the way it's designed, it's tight corners, it's
unsafe.
Not the kind of freeway that you would want to see for for full access. But the intent, and I believe what the vote of the town was when all this stuff was being built, was that was to be a full access. Ask Nancy Hess if she remembers.
Well, just before that, I mean, here's the way I look at it. From where I sit, public safety is one of the most important responsibilities I feel I have. So I'm hearing what you're describing. I'm hearing you have traffic safety that's saying one thing, and I believe we try to support the committees we appoint when they make decisions, or we certainly pay good attention to them. So whatever from my perspective, with all due respect to Paul, whatever transpired in building whatever's over there 10, 15 years ago is irrelevant to me today, particularly given the concerns you're having. I think what you're saying is you're typically first responders to emergency situations. You're talking about the southeast quadrant of the town here, which includes Farm Pond.
Correct.
And the concern of the officers in the union is that it's an unsafe condition exiting and responding in a rapid manner, and we know that seconds count in many situations.
Can
Can I ask you a couple questions?
I just touch on, absolutely, yeah. I'd like to respond to Paul's points. Absolutely, that was shared with me, that was the intent of that roadway was for people to access Town Hall. What I'm saying to you today is that it was poorly constructed, Paul. It's unsafe, and frankly, if I can finish.
I'm in agreement.
Oh, I know, but if I could finish, the law is clear, okay, Chapter 89, Section 7A. The law says that when an emergency vehicle is approaching another vehicle, that vehicle must pull to the right, stop, and allow for the emergency vehicle to pass. There is no way, we've put residents and town hall employees in a catch-22. The law says to do this, and there's no room to do that out back. And secondly, just to touch on your point about the library, I'm fully aware of the need of the library committee and their grant and the need to identify parking spaces on the town campus. I actually had a conversation with Jim Murphy, I want to say 2 years ago, and we had a discussion about those parking spaces back there. The parking spaces aren't going to be eliminated. What will simply happen is the police cars that we have parked up on the town hall lot on the front of the station are going to go down in the back. So those spots that the library needed to get the grant aren't disappearing. And frankly, when we talk about the town campus and children and our elderly residents walking to the library, I don't think it's safe having our elderly residents and children walk out to Sound Street and then up to Sanger Street to the library. Nor do I think it's safe for our elder residents, our children, to walk up this driveway and walk to the library. I'm actually making it easier and safer for members of the community to use this part of the parking lot to go to the library.
So let me just clarify something, since
And then I'd like to ask a question.
I'm not opposed to making improvements. I'm not opposed at all to the finding that the current situation is unsafe. I think that's a good point. Whatever happened, part of what I was explaining to you was historically what happened, but also I think it's important to have a second access to the campus.
I agree.
And if the way this access is working, given our current police department with its current manpower, the current vehicles, and the current uses of the campus by all users, if it's not working, and if traffic safety is saying it's not safe, then obviously something needs to be done. I'm on board with doing something, but I'm not sure putting up a sign right now that cuts off a second access and says no admission beyond this point without providing some other way to deal with it, that seems too precipitous, too fast.
I disagree, because we do have a means of access to the town hall campus. It's just not convenient for certain people, and that frankly, that's the issue that we're talking about. It's a matter of convenience versus public safety, from my strong opinion. Residents can travel down Sound Street, take a right onto Washington Street and enter Town Hall. No one's going to be precluded from entering the parking lot. I'm saying as the chief that it's not safe for my personnel to respond down that back lot when we have people coming in the opposite direction. And I'm not going to sit here as the chief of police and say that it's okay to allow people to continue to do that when my officers are saying that they're concerned about not being able to help people in the community. We had a great discussion last year about school safety and the importance of responding to incidents at the school. We have the regional school that's down Farm Road, as you're well aware. If we have to respond to that school and we get stuck there, we're not talking about minutes, we're talking about seconds. And I refuse to sit here, and we've had discussions, I've had discussions with people in Town Hall where their biggest burden is sitting in traffic for an additional 3 or 4 minutes on Washington Street. I'm sorry, I really don't care that you have to sit in traffic. The majority of the town has to sit in traffic when they go to work. I'm concerned about public safety, that's why you hired me as the chief of police.
So if I could ask you just a couple
Sure.
questions. Looking at that entrance in the back, it looks like the parking back there is part of the problem. That's what makes it so narrow. And I'm wondering, are you intending to give up the parking spaces in the back and have people park out in front so you have more room for officers to exit? And are you intending to use that only for emergency exits rather than coming and going by the officers? Because it would seem to me that both of those issues bear on what you're concerned about, which is the safety of somebody in an emergency situation getting out there.
To Paul's point about the library project, those parking spots are critical to the library project, the numbers. So we have there's no intent from us to remove the parking spaces behind there.
I'm talking about use of the parking spaces.
For whom?
For whatever vehicles are parked there now.
Typically, the people that park down there are the police officers.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's contributing to the unsafe situation. In other words, the focus of this discussion has been on eliminating the public use of that roadway.
Correct.
But I'm saying if it's really unsafe, it should also eliminate the police use of that roadway except in emergencies. In other words, it should be an out only during emergencies, and the rest of the time the officers come around like you suggested,
right,
and come in the other way. That would be, I think, the safest thing, and that would probably be the most practical thing.
That's a great point, Mike. However, if you come here during the day, there's very limited parking. There's very limited parking. And when you add to the fact that we have different groups that come to meet here for Council on Aging, we have different groups that come in here, or actually residents that come here to vote, what do? Do we limit it to certain days of the week, certain times? I mean, the bottom line is I just don't agree with allowing anybody access to the backside of the police station.
Except for officers parking there and coming in and out.
You could put the police cruisers down there, which would open up spaces on this side.
Yeah.
Because we typically park the police cruisers up at the top here.
Which would be good, because then when you get into it, you can see if there's somebody there, and it's a lot easier to get out.
Yeah.
What if you made it one-way? One-way exiting?
Now we have a car or 2 cars that are leaving the rear of the station, and the police cruiser has to sit behind the 2 cars and wait for them to get out onto Sherborn Street.
If they turn their blue lights on, the cars ahead of them won't.
I'd love to tell you that people always pull over for us, but they don't. And if there's traffic traveling up...
Don't you have just a bottlenecks, though, doesn't it, at that tree
Yes.
and at the exit itself? So regardless of what's parked against the building, that's ultimately where the bottleneck is.
Right, there are 2. There's one that we're speaking about now by the rear parking, but also as you come around the building, where the chief mentioned by the Sally Port, there's a second choke point. So, yes, there's certainly a problem at the rear of the building, directly adjacent to the parking spots, but there's another one as you start to round the building to come towards the rear of Town Hall. So there are 2 separate issues.
What if we widen those?
You'd have to do some major construction to correct that driveway.
Well, so, do you have other questions, Mike, at this stage?
How much of this,
Okay, well,
how
here,
much it's going to help?
anything helps that one might say, but, I mean, I hear what you're saying about finding another way of access at some point. I think that's what David's been trying to work through. And that's something to look forward to. We have the extra property over here and so forth. But what we're still dealing with is a safety concern that you feel is fairly urgent. that I think we can, that I'd be supportive of what you're talking about here at this stage of the game. So I am supportive of what you're trying to do. I don't know where these guys are. I think we can get to an alternate access, but today, tomorrow, I'm worried about the call you get that you get hung up because somebody's driving up to go to a COA thing or, you know, come to work.
Could I ask David what his recommendations are?
Absolutely.
I had already ordered do not enter signs within maybe hours of our discussion.
Right.
And then in the time of waiting for those to be delivered, I learned a lot more about it, that this was a problem that had gone back 13 years. So being here new, less than a year, it wasn't something that I felt had enough information to jump into and rectify at that point. Given that it had been going on for so long, so many parties, so many interested parties. But my recommendation is to close it off.
All right, I'm there between the public safety recommendation and the town administrator's recommendation. That's what we have, our public safety.
That's right.
I wouldn't want anyone in this town to lose a few seconds of time and have a major issue.
See, my real concern, Paul, is, you know, let's say it's a Friday night and you're out tipping cows in your field and one falls
That's what
on
I do
you.
every Friday
One
night.
goes the wrong way. I want them to be able to get to you quickly.
The beaver,
You are-
with the beaver.
I'm all right with this, but I do think it should be a rule that also applies to your officers. I think that if it's a danger to the public to have people coming in that gate, it doesn't matter if they're uniformed officers or not. That entrance, you've convinced me that it's a problem, but I think it's a problem for anybody coming in who could hold you up.
Sure. Well, maybe I misunderstood what you're
Yeah.
saying. Your officers aren't going to be coming
Well,
in that person.
I thought in order to access those parking lot spaces, that's what you said.
They can go down, they can go out to the
Yeah.
front of the station and
Yeah,
pull in.
well, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, we're not preventing the cruisers from necessarily going up and down there, doing the police
Right.
business, right? You're not
Right.
suggesting
No,
that?
no. I'm sorry, I apologize, I misunderstood your question. You're talking about the officers' personal vehicles?
Yeah.
Correct,
Yeah.
okay.
I mean, you know,
Right.
I can't tell from the outside who's driving it, but if it's gonna block somebody coming out, it could be somebody going to police station business.
All right, so given that we're adding signs, do we need a selectmen's vote on something here?
No.
You're good to go on that.
Just, I would like the town administrator and the police chief and traffic safety and so on working towards finding a way to make an alternate access that would provide. And it looks like we're going to have a new library. We have the town hall here. We have the police station. It is a municipal campus. We really should have access, some meaningful access.
Yeah, there's flatter places to access the bay.
Yeah,
the
David
terrible
had a great idea.
We didn't own that
We have
land
the
at the time.
extension there, right?
The West Campus
Yeah.
extension over here and the task force that we've
Right.
been working with.
Yeah.
I had sent them an official notice yesterday, I think it was, or the day before, that at this point, focus on the use of the lot as an alternative entrance. At some point, this parking lot's gonna be expanded into that lot, so at that time, we'll have to see.
best
if
to
it-
do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if it demands to have another entrance.
Yeah, so I think we're on the same page on that, Paul.
Well, yeah, I'd
Yeah,
like to-
I would suggest that that's a good idea to get another entrance in there.
Yeah.
I mean, it may be convenience, but it is convenience. It adds up to a lot of minutes for a lot of people to wait in that traffic.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. All right, sorry for the delay. We have up Conservation Commission at 7:30, add 10 minutes, 7:40.
Grants too,
Oh, we have grants, yeah, I'm sorry, thank you for reminding me.
Diane
No.
is saying, she skipped something else.
We gotta do the grants.
Yeah, well, I think we have
Mike's
people here
saying
for the
that.
grants.
We have people for the grants.
Grants?
Sherborn
So-
Business
Sorry.
Association.
Appreciate your patience.
Our blood flowing.
Well, it's good. All right, so we have a list of grants here. So, and I had one question about if it's a complete list, okay, whether Pat Cassell's Farm Pond Pump House restoration should be under what we're dealing with.
We have Jim
No.
Campbell here, you can explain it, I guess.
That is actually is a
Separate
citizen
entity.
doing something that's
Okay,
getting.
so that's
grant.
not us.
Yeah.
So what we have is do we want to do them all together then, just in the interest of expediency, or we want to, and still allow for folks who have come,
I'm just trying to find where I put the
speak
list.
and raise the flag and so forth? Well, what we have is Carol Rubenstein for the swap shops getting these are Sherborn Business Association grant awards. And the Sherborn Business Association, from the funds that it raises at its Brewfest the last 2 years, and this I presume is from the most recent one, accepts grant applications and then makes some grants based on certain determinations that they feel are in the interest of the community. So first one is for the swap shop, $700. I'm not sure exactly what they're doing with it, but I know it's going to be put to good use.
It's mostly lighting.
Lighting
Yeah.
at the swap shop. Thank you. Okay. Then we have Thursday Campbell had made an application for the Disability Advisory Committee had made an application for automatic doors at Town Hall, and there's a $2,000 grant award for that, which is a portion of what it will cost, and your budgeting process will cover the balance of that, as I understand it. We have Melissa Bowman for the town campus has a dog waste unit grant for $199, and I think most people will definitely appreciate that. We have a rescue Gene Guthrie for a rescue board at Farm Pond for $424, and this presumably is to paddle out and save people's lives. It's marvelous. And then we have, I'm going to screw up the pronunciation, Leah Yeri? Karen Jewell. COA yeah, it's spelled a little differently. COA intergenerational event, $600. So I'll take a motion to accept all of these
So
wonderful
moved.
grant awards.
So moved.
Second?
With great thanks to the Sherborn Business Association
That's
for
terrific.
putting this together and for caring for our community and to provide these important benefits.
In all, there's about $8,000 that was handed out. So
Yes,
there are other community groups,
Yeah.
such as the playground group down here that, to
Yeah.
restore the playground.
There is, on the second page here, a list of all kinds of other beneficiaries of the largesse of the Sherborn Business Association. We're focusing on the awards to the municipality and our different branches. So here we've got the swap shop, which is the recycling center, the town hall, which is this building, it's under the Board of Selectmen, the dog waste units for the town hall campus, which is under our jurisdiction, Farm Pond, which is under our jurisdiction, and Council on Aging. So the governmental grants by law have to be accepted by the Board of Selectmen. And so there's a motion to accept it.
Right, and I see a hand in the back from Thurza, so I know Thurza has something to say.
And Rose was the inspiration for the Brewfests. He was the most dedicated worker too. Everyone in town should give him their thanks and support.
Well, we thank Ed Rose.
Yeah, Ed Rose.
Well, we
You know,
thank,
and if-
Catalyst.
and we thank everyone in the Sherborn Business Association, and we thank those who have applied for these grants. These are all excellent things. Our community is going to be better off for all of these projects that are going to get done. Thank you.
So it's moved and seconded, I'll take a vote. All those in favor? Great, excellent. Thank you very much for coming out. Thanks for making your grants, and thanks again to the Sherborn Business Association. Okay. All right. Well, since they're here, we'll get them set up. Paul's going to step out for a minute, but you guys want to set up and just...
Should we tell them when they leave they need to go to the front?
That's right.
Yeah?
Nobody sneaks out the back entrance anymore, all right?
Let's see, you want to pull up another?
All right.
We have to do the warrant articles, too.
So you brought a whole,
We got the whole conservation.
is this
Commission
the whole Conservation
We're
Commission?
meeting tonight anyway.
We're next door.
We're
Oh, I
next
see.
door anyway.
Oh, okay.
We
So
lose
you
a-
guys,
we
you
lose a
guys
quorum.
meet like every 2 weeks, don't you?
Yeah,
That's pretty incredible.
thanks.
Wow. Wow.
There you go.
Great. Well, here's what I do. While Paul's stepped out for a minute,
We'll pass their budget. Is that what you're gonna
no. If you could just describe an overview of, it's well written in here what you all do, what Conservation Commission does, but just for those who may not be fully familiar that are paying attention this evening or at a future telecast here, just give a brief overview of what Conservation Commission does, so, and then get into the key budget drivers here, things that that the taxpayers' money's going for, and then however you want to bring this forward. How's that?
Sure, why not? Although we just don't want to forget the fact that we have a very small warrant article that we don't want to get lost.
That's right, yeah.
It's just a housekeeping kind of change there.
Yeah.
Your Conservation Commission, not that I was prepared to do a PR job, your Conservation Commission has two major thrusts. It essentially enforces the State Wetlands Protection Act and its regulations, and then there's also underlying that, or in addition to that, the town has also passed its own bylaw for wetlands protection that has a few more selected additional protections for wetlands here, because the wetlands in this town are important for the town's water quality and quantity, which obviously is important in this town where we all have private wells and septic systems. And also the wetlands are particularly important for flood control and stormwater management, which has become increasingly an issue, it seems, in the last few years. And the wetlands have a big role in providing those services. And then the wetlands also provide recreation and open space benefits, as well as they also provide a lot of biodiversity, which it's both a human benefit as well as a benefit to the creatures, depending on your approach to that issue. So I'd say the majority of our time is spent basically trying to enforce those regulations, and a lot of it is basically helping town residents comply with them in terms of the kind of projects they want to do. We work with them to see that they fit into what the state and the bylaw is. Then there's a whole other thrust, which we're gradually doing more work on, is that we also have conservation land. We have about 800 acres of land that are conservation land, and we maintain a lot of those fields. The examples that you see are the Barber Reservation, and you also have areas like the Hope Still Reservation on the corner of Mill. And those are areas that are a little more notable because they have open fields, which we try to maintain, which takes a bit of effort. Otherwise, things would return to all forest, as you'd see in some of our other properties. But there's about 8 properties around in town which are used for passive recreation, of which the Barber is clearly the largest and the most commonly and used. And so we spend a bit of effort trying to figure out how to maintain those lands, and we're trying to improve the management of them, since we've embarked on improvements where we're trying to clear back to stone walls so you get better vistas and better use of the, and basically more enjoyable use of, let's say, the Barber Reservation. And so that takes a bit of our time. And that is an activity that we do with a lot of other town groups. We try to work with other volunteers and other volunteer groups in town. And we also get a lot of funding and donated services to also support the activity of the land management, which is really critical and going forward. And we're even going ahead to do some studies with a landscape management school to help see what would be the best way to manage the Barber Reservation, for example, so that we're a little bit more best practices in that area. So those are the two major areas, the wetlands and the open space management that we do. And our budget is primarily driven by, to do all of this work, we have one staff person. We meet twice a month, and sometimes we have other special meetings, and there's always an ongoing, we probably deal with about 100 or more formal applications for projects that go on town that have to be reviewed for wetlands issues, as well as numerous inquiries by residents about whether there are wetland issues that they have to deal with. And That continual activity, we're supported by an administrator agent, Bridget, here, who's been doing it for about 5-6 years now. And I would say probably 80-90% of our budget is her staff time. We also have labor costs for minutes clerks, and then after that, probably the biggest line item is the cost that we have for doing some land maintenance that we were just talking about to try to keep the fields open. And so her time is the biggest budget driver, and then there's land maintenance after that. We have, as everybody else, we have all sorts of little office supplies and postage, because there's a lot of regulatory filings and things like that we do. So in our budget this year, we have proposed a budget that you see there. It's probably the two most out of the ordinary. Is the fact that we have, well, it's not out of the ordinary for us. We have the agents, I call it the agent for abbreviated, but it's really administrator/agent, but her salary, we propose the 1% COLA that we have, and then there's the issue that we were doing each year, is the fact that, and we went to the personnel board this morning, who approved what we were proposing this morning, that when we hired Bridget the 5-6 years ago, she had a lot of experience in this area, but not particularly as an agent in Massachusetts, and we hired her below, in order to become trained in whatever at that time, we hired her at about 10% or more below what was the approved salary for an agent at that time, for an experienced agent at that time. And part of staff retention basically, she is now a fully experienced agent who gets many phone calls for jobs elsewhere, that I could say. So she's an experienced agent in Massachusetts and can get other work. But we try to basically move towards a salary that is closer to that approved salary, which was based on what are reasonable salaries for experienced agents. So we had a salary plan that's in our budget submission that we've been doing each year, where we do an extra 1% on top of the COLA that gradually closes that gap over maybe a 10-year period at this point between what her salary is and what could be considered an approved salary for an experienced agent. And so that extra 1% is another $429 in our budget, in addition, on top of the 1%. And those are probably the two of the larger numbers in our budget change. And then there is the land maintenance. Is the other item. Do you want to ask a question along the way?
No, so that's good. I mean, I understand that, and I understand the salary approach you've been taking. That's consistent with what you've done in years past. You're still continuing on. One would ask the question whether that will continue on. How much longer that's likely to continue on, if there's an end date to that or not. I don't know.
Well, there's an end date in there, because essentially, unless we go through another process which is an issue for maybe all personnel in the town, of what their approved salary is for these kind of positions. Yep. She is in the...
Well, when do you anticipate getting to where that...
As shown in the table there that I give each year.
All right.
Right now, it's stretched out so long due to fiscal constraints that it's almost a 10-year plan. Now, it would be nice...
So does the target keep moving then? Is that what we're doing? No.
No, it only moves in the sense that the COLA changes the...
Okay.
We're only trying to, in a sense, the percentage increases above the COLA are only trying to make up that little 5%. Now it's 5%. It was originally 10%. We're trying to close that difference over time, which is only on top of the COLA, basically, or separate from the COLA. So it has an end date. And the only way that would change if one goes through that whole review process where you change what's the salary for that kind of position.
I was also, just a couple other points. I'm very glad to see you're increasing your maintenance budget, and you've reflected that you're dealing with assets of the town, and they do need to require additional maintenance than maybe has been allocated before. So I'm happy to see that. I think that's, the value that we get out of that's far greater than the cost that we're putting into it in the long run.
Right, and we leverage that, obviously, with a lot of other sources.
And I understand that the beavers aren't in your budget for a variety of reasons. I don't know where they're gonna be. That's a topic for us, if ever, anywhere.
We're happy to,
But
we
I
would be
understand
happy to
your
participate
rationale
in
for
that discussion.
not having them in there. One key question that I just don't know, I don't know that you'll be able to answer it, but years ago, we used to have the fees cover half of the budget or half of the salary, I don't know whatever it was.
Right, it was a percentage
Now the
of her-
full amount has been in for a couple of years. But if I look at the fees, and maybe I'm not seeing all the fees, and this may be a question for the accountant, but the fees that we're generating, that I'm seeing on the sheet, are not half of the salary, where before half of the salary was covered by the fees.
Yeah,
Or
And so that's a
17.
fee thing to consider.
last year's
Right.
fees were 17,000, and the salary request is 46, so.
Yeah. so
Right,
we're
it's not
covering
quite half. This year, we're on a projected to be closer to 20,000 or more for the fees.
For the fees.
For the current fiscal
And
year.
46 is the total, right?
That's total,
Yeah.
including the
That's
minutes
with
clerk.
So that's more than just a.
That's with
sorry.
the minutes
But
clerk.
still, it's fallen, because of the nature of the mix of permits, it actually, the fee revenue has
There's-
fallen. It has been as high as $24,000 or $5,000 in the past, and it goes up and down. But
Yeah,
yes, it's
I guess I'm
fallen.
just identifying it as something that we need to explore a little closer.
Well, it comes back to an issue of, right, to what extent do you, the structure of our fees, and who should
Yes.
bear all of that, and
That's right.
and how much you put the burden on the individual applicants versus the fact that we're providing a town service for everybody to make sure that it benefit. But it looks like we'd be a little bit higher and closer to the 50% this year, for example.
I see.
And it's always tricky.
The fees are still flowing in, but they're going into the general budget, so.
No, but he's still trying to look at how that matches, which is reasonable. I think that's
Yeah.
something to do.
And I may misunderstand some of the accounting.
Certainly address, how much that is, so you can see what the offset is. But it's not essentially change, it's just handled.
No, that I understand, but I just would have expected, based on what I'm looking at,
Yeah.
to see roughly half of the intent was, we changed the practice, and we took comfort in the practice change, being that the fees would go through this revenue cycle and still cover half the nut.
Yeah,
It isn't, but that's not to say change the nut that we're trying to cover, it's to say, continue to monitor and think about what
Yeah,
we're doing
no, I
on
mean, the
fees.
question is how much do you want to do it there? And
Yeah.
it does go up and down, and,
Yeah.
yeah, no, we do look at it, and we try to
Yeah.
think about the fact that, that this year that year was a little lower. And it's partly because there's a work that we do, and it varies for town projects that we don't charge for.
Sure.
For example, this revenue number could be higher if let's say we charged fees for town work that we don't
Understood.
charge fees for.
Right.
And that's always an ongoing issue as to what extent
Right.
town projects should show a full cost or not. So that number is somewhat, it goes up and down with that kind of work
Right.
too.
And that's a judgment.
And, but no, I agree with you, it's a general issue that I would be happy to talk about another time about
Okay.
to what kind of cost recovery you'd like to see for that kind of stuff.
That's all I had to say. Any questions, gents, or?
Not really any questions. I mean, I would point out that I think we're unusual for a town of our size to have a full-time conservation agent. That's a luxury, we're fortunate to have that, but it is a policy decision that we've made. It looks like we've made it a few years ago.
Yeah.
Well, she's not quite full-time, but, yeah.
Yeah, she's not quite full-time. The other thing is probably, and when you think of the towns our size, we're certainly a town that has a whole bunch of land that is under conservation
Well,
protection. And maybe
like you, I'm glad to see the land management side of this
Yeah.
being kicked up a little bit. I think that's a good thing.
But I would say to that issue that I'd say a lot of other towns don't have private wells and septic systems where I think that, I mean, it comes back to your philosophy about the value of our wetlands protection and how much you should have and go beyond the state. But my point of view, obviously, not obviously, I feel that given our local conditions, that wetlands have a little bit more importance and we have more of them to protect, and therefore that somewhat higher level compared, although it's hard to compare with other towns because other towns have a different cost structure that it belies. For example, Dover has a whole other consultant and people have to pay differently.
That's
So
right.
it's not so easy to see what the level of service is on the town. So it's not a simple comparison, but I do think we warrant some additional protection for
Yeah.
what we do.
And that is partly an answer to your question too, though, Peter. I mean, where Dover uses a consultant that the applicants pay at least in part for, which is a different way and burdensome on applicants, really.
Yeah.
That's the question.
I appreciate the thoroughness of the information you provided. I will say that I'm sort of a methodical guy in certain ways, so I'm looking at this, I looked at the next page, I look at the next page, and then I read that page, which is, then turns out, there it is in font you
I
can
tried
read
to make it right,
versus
exactly.
the microscopic font. So I'm a little cross-eyed tonight, I apologize.
I tried to send it the other way so that you guys can figure out, so you guys can read it, because we do try, because also there's the other issues where we do try to get other sources of funds.
Yeah, no, I
But
understand.
I didn't mention the fact that Bridget has managed to obtain other sources of funds, and we do try to work to get other donations and other kind of things. And that was part of what, in the past, even when we've asked for additional hours for her time, is that does lead to her being able to have time to get grants and to work with fundraising from residents, whether it's donated services or money.
Yeah.
So that I think it's a good use of our time that we've managed to get a good return on that effort.
Before we go to the warrant article, any other questions or
Yeah,
thoughts, Paul?
thought
Please.
maybe I fit a word in edgewise every time I hear you guys talking.
Just hit me with this,
There's
Paul.
there's a rare moment, right?
Conservation commissions, as I'm sure you discussed while I was out of the room, have important functions with regard to wetlands as required by state law and the local bylaw that were voted by the town. And they also have important responsibilities about property management. These things cost money. And when you look at the overall budget and you compare it with their overall responsibility, this is a very reasonable budget. The next point I would make is that one of the things that I've been pushing for years is for boards and committees to have professional staff. And that means the public is assured not just of whatever the expertise is of the volunteers who participate on that board or committee, but you actually have somebody who, by education or training or taking courses, can assure the public that there's a level of objectivity, a level of standards that come from outside the community. It's sort of the big push to get like Gino Carlucci or a planning board specialist was quite a concept in the time. The idea of having a town administrator for the Board of Selectmen, it's just one of those things. And so the Conservation Commission has followed in that path and has a professional, and having a professional benefits everyone. My third comment would be that I would support the salary structure for the agent in view of the history of the particular employee, the history of the financial assurances that were made a long time ago to the employee and to the public about the employee, the fairness, all those issues, and you add to it the approval of the Personnel Board, that to me is a pretty convincing case. So I see this budget as a minor budget in the overall scheme of things. When you look at the 1.4%, like we talked about before, if somebody has a budget of $100 and they go over that by 3%, that's $3, whereas somebody has a budget of $1 million and they go over by 1%, every 1% is a lot more on a bigger budget than it is on a smaller budget. This is a fairly inconsequential budget. It's partially funded by the collection of fees, and we have to pay for state law requirements and the bylaw requirements. and the property management. So I see nothing wrong with this budget.
No, but we did say, we prefaced it before, earlier in the evening when we had a break, we started talking about budgets. One of the things we agreed we weren't going to do tonight was approve budgets as selectmen. And the reason we're not approving them is because we don't have a big picture. We don't have the total town financial model, and we don't have this town of the selectmen's all budgets in total, because the guidance was 1.4%, which is not to suggest any of us are interested in altering what's here, but we may have to juggle the deck a little bit here.
That's as it happened last year, too. I mean, that's what I expected. It was just a matter of get some guidance from you as to how you're feeling about what we're asking for.
Michael, don't forget your warrant article you were going to tell me.
Yes, no, that's what don't worry, we're not going to forget it.
Well, I think I have a question. I'll just ask, go for it. Yep.
Yeah, hi, Susan Tyler, Western Avenue. I just want to say that I was at the person on board this meeting this morning, and yes, they did approve the 1% increase in pay above COLA. They did not call it a step increase. But they, at the end of the conversation, they themselves had some questions. They specifically said, as you did.
When does it end?
When does it end? What's the end point on this? They were also the issue of whether a town employee can work from home also has come up with the personnel board. They'll be looking into that. And then also the actual hours that are worked. Right now, as you'll see in the paperwork, the proposed budget is for 33 hours. The personnel board has not approved any increase in hours above 28, and that goes back to 2008 upon hire. It's never gone back to personnel. This morning at personnel, they had the planning board that was there for an increase, for approval for an increase in hours for Gino Carlucci. But they have not done that. There's been no approval of the personnel board. So they have three things that they're still going to be looking at. Yes, they did agree on the 1%. I heard just earlier, Michael Lesser stated that 5% will get her to where she is. Since 2010, there have been 6.5% has already been above the COLAs for everybody else. That's not including the additional 1% that was talked about tonight. So there's already been an increase above COLA over the last 3 years of 6.5%. So again, I heard the 5% tonight will get her there. At what point does the end point come? Everybody that works for this town is gaining in skills and gaining in years of employment. And the personnel clearly state that there is no such thing as step increases in Sherborn or increase in pay for years of service. Thank you.
Thanks. Those are good facts, and I'm glad personnel's looking at some of these issues. I know I've raised some of those issues with personnel in the past, but it doesn't change what we're talking about.
It's not really a budget issue.
And it's not, it's something that, I know David can take under advisement to explore further to the extent there's, and, other things. So I'm not worried about the hours. We've been doing the hours forevermore here, so.
Well, the job's approved for 36 hours.
Yeah,
so
right. Right.
We're not going to
I'm not going to worry about each of the
gonna-
specifics
yeah,
that you
that's
brought
right.
up there. But essentially, right, part of the issue is that it's an approved position for 36 hours from personnel originally, and that's part of why it's gone through the board and the advisory for years, and the hours issue is not necessarily always addressed. I have to go back
And I think
look,
if you
but-
just factor in the big picture story that Paul was describing,
Then I'll leave it at
So
that.
if we go to our
Let's go to
warrant
the warrant
article,
article.
word change or
Yes.
words change, what are we talking about here?
You want to do that?
Yes. Okay, so for the warrant article, I would like to ask the selectmen for a couple things because it is pertaining to the release of town council's opinion. And I wanted to know if the Board of Selectmen would be willing to waive the attorney-client privilege for emails with town council's opinion from 1/8, sorry, I have them here.
So this was town council advice to you guys?
Right.
And you want to share
have we
it
seen
somewhere?
Well, we
I
can't
have
talk about it
them
unless
for
you
you.
let us
Well, we haven't seen it, so we don't know whether we
I have
can
it for
grant
you.
the privilege.
Yeah, there's two problems here. Being a town council myself in other communities, I would much prefer, as a town council, to be able to write, when I know an opinion is going to be released to the public, I use a different format than an email to a client that might contain other information. So rather than releasing prior opinions, it's much better to ask town council, could town council prepare?
Do you have a standard procedure for that, that she can write
opinion
something that
for
you don't have?
the public as opposed to attorney-client advice that's for the commission only?
Do we need
So we
do we need the attorney's opinion, town
It's
council's
just-
opinion, in order to
Not
explain what's
really.
going on?
Well, what we did, actually, yeah, it gets
It's just a
tricky.
backup.
So is there a way that we can get her to write us opinions that we don't have to come to you? Like, we're asking her, we're working on cleaning up
You say
problems in our
right-
regulations.
right up
And
front,
we ask her opinion.
You want an opinion that is for the public.
Okay, so we just can do that for her, because we have.
So she doesn't need to talk about what lawsuit did this and who
No,
did that.
they don't have any of that kind of stuff. It's just, it's not that big a deal. But, so we just have to make sure she writes it
Just
down.
circle back with her that she provides you what she's comfortable releasing to the
Okay,
public.
fine, then we'll
Okay.
take care of that
All right.
separately.
All right, so the warrant article is to see if the town will vote to amend the Sherborn Wetlands Bylaw, Chapter 17, Section 2, by removing the following language. Does everyone have this?
No,
None of us have it.
Oh, I thought.
but I'll take the
We had
Cliff
it last
Notes
week,
version.
but we don't have that book with us today.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
only
that's
a-
fine.
Yeah.
I think we had it last week, maybe not. I don't think we ever got
I
this
don't-
much language.
I
No, we
don't
never
know
Language
that I've
we
seen
changed
this.
Earlier in the bylaw, but we forgot to change it later.
So are we in section 2?
Section 2, the last sentence, it says, "And by mailing a notice to the applicant, Board of Health, the Board of Selectmen, the Planning Board, all abutters, and to such other persons as the commission may by regulation determine." And this is my language. This language is redundant to the notice that the applicant is required to give under the last paragraph of Section 1 of our bylaw and under Mass General Law Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40.
So we're just trying to eliminate some duplicate notification.
It's an undue burden to the commission to have them do this when the applicant's already doing it as part of their application process.
So you've noted, the notice on the application process is notice of the filing of the notice of intent.
They're already,
In paragraph 2 addresses the notice of the hearing, but I'm all for eliminating unnecessary notices.
right.
Yeah, we actually changed it earlier when it was voted last year, but we forgot to change it in the second place in the bylaw.
But the initial notice should have the date of the hearing on it anyway?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's all covered anyway.
right.
So will abutters be noticed of whatever this
Yeah,
public
the
hearing is
applicant
anyway?
notifies
The
them
applicant
with
notifies.
The
certified mail.
applicant under Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and in the last paragraph of our Section 1 of our
Yeah.
bylaw
And
requires the
practice-
If you look at
applicant.
section 1, you'll see the notification
Yeah,
that will
okay.
go out.
It's
that
required for opening a hearing. They have to
Okay,
prove they know.
so everybody that needs to know gets to know
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
And you just don't have to let them know.
Right.
And you don't require broader
That's the
notice than the
Cliff Notes
state does
version.
anyways.
Thank you.
It's identical.
Right.
Yeah, we do the same thing as the state.
Yeah,
Right.
that's, which is fair, that's right.
Okay, good.
Thank you for explaining to this. We had a meeting last week and we were going through the notices of intent, and we weren't sure what you were doing with this, and now I understand what you're doing, and it makes sense. Thank you.
All right,
Good. Anything else, Mike?
I think we're good.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for coming
Thank you,
in.
gentlemen.
Nice to see you all. Keep up the good work.
Take the front entrance from the parking lot.
Yeah, you can't go out the back way or
I definitely agree
No
with
more
that one.
screaming out the back. or
deep yogurt.
Yeah, Steve, it was you.
Unless you got rid of
In my Prius.
Or on your bike? See you, Michael,
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, kiddies, thanks for waiting. We really, actually, Kitty, are on schedule.
How did we do that?
Well, we're not really. We had scheduled an executive session at 8:30. We're ahead of that. I have a different clock.
Well, we did have the times out of order at one point, but.
All right, so Kitty, you're here. You and Marty Marty are here for the,
No, you have Joe Meany.
Joe Meany, I'm sorry. Why did I say, didn't I read a Marty thing in here?
Yes,
somewhere?
Marty Waters is our illustrious treasurer.
That's where I read
Covering
it.
at
But
home
this is
from
Joe
surgery.
Meany. Yeah. I'm sorry, Joe. So just an overview, elderly housing, what you do, how it works, and what are your key budget drivers? You were forewarned early in the evening, like 4 hours ago.
I know, but I was listening to think, and I thank the Conservation Commission for keeping the chairs warm. Could I just digress for 1 minute?
Do whatever you want, Kitty.
Okay. In December, Alan Slosby gave the elder housing a laser printer for the community room. And I believe we have to ask you to accept it. Where it's,
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
and we thank Mr. Slosby
That's great.
for that. Okay. What do we do? I sometimes wonder what we do. I
You
find
do a
it-
lot.
Well, we have a wonderful community down there, and we learn something from every new resident as they come in. And what we are doing is providing housing for seniors, whether they're residents of Sherborn when they enter, whether they are former residents, whether they are relatives of Sherborn residents. And thanks to your vote last spring, we have also included on our second list town employees with more than 10 years of service. But most of the town employees live out of town, and they would have to go to the third list, which is anyone else in the world. But now they're up on that second list. We haven't had any applications from town employees as of yet, but I'm delighted we have it there. So we are doing our best to provide quality housing for a reasonable price for our seniors. And how else do we want to put it? I hadn't thought about this. I was, as I say, listening to the other.
Well, you have how many units?
24.
24 units.
How many have been renovated so far?
We've renovated 15,
Wow.
and we'll be starting our 16th, the 1st of February.
Wow.
So that leaves 8, obviously.
Right along. That's within
So that's
a year and a
two-thirds.
half. Yeah.
Well, we started 3 years ago, really, because we had 4.
You should have just said you had a
Yeah.
year.
And the other thing is we have been 100% full
You have been since,
since, well, the last 6 months.
Since the last time
that's
she was
great.
in, I think.
Yeah.
Well, we've had to date, we've had, call it 8 vacancy months in this fiscal year.
Okay. Wow.
Where a year ago we were 32.
34.
Yeah.
34.
Yeah.
So-
And that was due, of course, we were doing so many, we did, I think, almost 10 renovations in maybe a 14-month period.
And so that also shows the value of why you did those renovations. You were able to fill that place up in part, I presume, because the units are
They're fresh.
fresh.
Definitely, yes, definitely true. At one point, we almost had 5 vacancies, if you remember.
Yeah, no, I remember, yeah.
And we had a person that is leaving as of the end of this month, and we have someone already signed up to move in as soon as it's finished, which is very exciting.
That's great.
So we provided you with
Your version,
overview.
that's right.
We think it's easier to read.
Yep.
And I will let Joe handle it because he's the creator of it.
Well, it's very clear
All right,
and
so can we
thorough.
maybe-
No.
If you can find it.
I have mine. It's in the tab.
Oh, it's in the tab? Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
Excellent. Diane, thank you. Is this what this is what she snuck in?
And this is your budget,
Yes.
and you outline the detailed items.
It's obviously the same numbers that is in the official document we submit to Ruth.
Right.
This we do pretty much for ourselves.
And you track
to understand as we
spending
go.
on this,
Right.
yeah.
And I think, as you know, I mean, it's pretty hard, at least for me, and I think for all of us, 2 or 3 months down the road to remember what you assigned to what. So to have it all kind of spelled out a little bit better.
No, I think it's great. And you don't necessarily need to go through the details,
Okay.
okay? But I do have two or three questions, if I
Okay.
could, Joe. You have paint exterior. Last year, we had painting the exterior, so maybe this is a 15 grand in the budget item, and this year we have paint exterior 16 grand. Is this painting different parts of the exterior?
No.
Or did we not get to it last year?
No. I think we had it in this current year's budget.
That's what I mean.
Yes.
Yeah.
We had a problem with our fire alarm system.
Okay.
A ground fault issue. So.
You
that-
use the money there.
Yes.
Okay,
We
gotcha.
also had a couple of water heaters
Yeah,
fail on us.
yeah.
We were surprised with this because the water heaters weren't that old. Well, relatively speaking, 7 years.
Yeah.
So we found a system where we could install automatic shut-off valves on all of our heaters.
Yep.
That was not in our budget. So, as
now
a way of
this budget
explanation, we had it in
contemplates-
the budget, we just can't, we don't have the money left to do that, so.
This budget contemplates replacing now a bunch of water heaters, and that explains some of the increase you're showing.
Right.
Here's,
Go ahead, please.
well, I'm just bouncing around, so.
It's okay,
you want-
please, please.
A couple of things jump out at me, and I don't know the answers to these questions, and one of them I mentioned to David. You know, you have fees for services, right? It's like payment in
Yes.
lieu of taxes, but you're paying for particular things. So, for example, you're paying $2,500 to the town for a portion of insurance. You know, your piece of the cost of the insurance policy the town has. And likewise, you're paying the town for lawn mowing and snow removal. And
That's in
my
the fee
question
for
for
service.
David, and he didn't have the answer, and this was just before our meeting tonight, was whether that, take the insurance piece, whether we also have the $2,500 of that insurance in our total insurance number, and if we're double counting it, you see what I mean? And likewise for the snow and ice. No, I understand that, so I'm just saying because part of what this payment in lieu, you know, paying the town for these services or the cost of the insurance is more of a revenue to the town as opposed to, I just don't want to, I just haven't figured out in my mind if we do have duplication of cost, because when people vote on the omnibus budget, your $257,000 total nut is what they're going to vote on, right? Or,
It's offset by fees already collected.
no, I understand, and it's paid for. We know that it's all paid for out of your rent and your maintenance fees that you charge the residents.
But isn't
But it
that
might be double
2,500 on
counting.
the revenue side for the town also then?
Yes.
So in
So
other
it might
words,
wash
so
or,
it's just a double entry.
yeah, I don't know. So
This
it's,
is all regulated by the Department of Revenue. There are all kinds of rules and regulations that, A, require this kind of allocation
Yeah.
of costs, but B, it doesn't need to be appropriated twice and be registered as a revenue
That's what
source.
I'm-
So let's say there's 100,000 of insurance, and just to make it easy, let's say 50,000 goes there and 50,000 stays here. Well, you don't have to appropriate 100 on the town side, then realize 50,000 of income. No, you appropriate 50 here, 50 there.
that's what I'm talking about.
That's all, this is all DOR
Yeah.
specified.
Right.
You won't get into the book
You know, all
too
I'm saying
much, I
is,
just-
all I'm saying is the number comes out the same at the end anyway.
Yes,
I hope so.
Regardless of whether we.
but this is a
appropriate.
town accountant issue.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's what I'm
it's not the
asking.
right way to do it, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's cost us anything. If it's being.
As far as
Well, it's supposed, there's only one way to handle it, and it's all specified by DOR, and it's
I just
all
want
the
to
town
confirm
accountant's
that.
job
That's
to-
all. Yeah.
To
And
make
it's-
sure that it's done that way.
As far as the fee for services, as we call it, it's the pilot program,
Yes.
payment in lieu of taxes.
Yes.
That is the number, that percentage that was agreed upon with that study
I
committee.
understand.
And then to that, we add the 6,300 for the CMD services.
Services, yeah.
So, and as I understood it, that 14,000 goes into your free cash.
That's right, or it comes through as
Following year.
revenue and so forth,
Yeah,
yes.
so that, though it's being spent in the prior year,
We pick it up
we
in
pick it up.
general fund in
Yeah.
there for free cash, yeah. One of the other things, just thinking ahead, I saw a note about the debt service going from 75 grand up to 100 grand next year, I
Yes.
think, right? So when when the town did all this modeling of this way you're doing things now, was that factored in? I hope that was factored in.
Yes.
That you're anticipating that big bump.
Yes.
And you're anticipating it in your fee and maintenance structure and so
We are,
forth.
because
Right.
we have more than that 250.
Yeah, you got a bunch of-
$7,000 we anticipate being available by town meeting.
Yeah.
And we are leaving some monies there to accommodate the future payments that will be due on our
Yep.
behalf.
Yep. Okay. Well, you guys do such a thorough job. What else do you want to tell us, or while you have
If I
us?
can just say one thing, we compliment the professionals that the different committees here in town hire, and I have to compliment Slosby, who is our manager.
Hey, that's good to hear.
And they're,
So you would rather not have anybody else
well,
because of the service they provide?
they've provided very good service, and they I believe they work very well with the residents, and they're the first line of attack if a resident has a problem.
Who are the members of
Plus,
the
they have a
committee?
genuine concern for the,
Yeah.
for the
And
residents.
they've worked with the town and they've worked with the, who are your members again, just so the world
Well,
knows?
my prize member,
Okay.
Joe Meany, Dr. David Curtis,
that's
Carol
right.
Perezzi, Harrison, I'm sorry, I blow that over here. Mike Kickham, Marty Waters, Joan Rothney,
Joe Cashin.
Joe Cashin. That's it. That's it. We are 8 members. If there's a resident out in town that is interested in elder housing, please give me a call. You could use one more member. And Paul, we presented your proposal that we change our name, and they are very happy with elder housing. So we go.
I listen to
we
you,
do the
Paul.
same.
Let me just, if I could, give some recognition to Joe Meany, particularly on this construction piece. That has worked out so beautifully. I have seen the renovated apartments. I have toured them. They're beautiful. This has been well managed. I know, Joe, you've been very active on that. I'm sure others have participated. I don't mean to exclude anybody, but you've been the point person on this, and I am very impressed at how you have, as a volunteer, done so much with so little, with such a beautiful result. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, he's
Great.
A1.
Yes. Mike, any,
Things to do.
No, what both of you guys said was great, and I have nothing to add.
perfect.
I'm all set.
We
But
thank you
thank you
very
for
much.
coming.
Thanks for the great work.
All right,
We'll keep it up.
thanks.
Keep it up. Thanks for coming tonight and your patience. All right, that's good. I think
Are
we
we budgeted
covered
out?
our ground. We're budgeted out for the night, and we covered all our other
I think
stuff.
the tree policy was going to make another appearance, did you?
When we finally found it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was interesting reading.
Unfortunately, I didn't throw out the
That's good.
We're still up in that. Take care.
Take care.
Good night.
I think there's a lot of things up in your attic.
Yeah, Kitty, you have.
But no mice.
You're
no
the town
bats.
historian. Yeah. All right, well, that's all I had for the agenda tonight. Gentlemen, any other words of
To adjourn?
wisdom? We have a motion to adjourn. Paul, any last words?
Just a question, why the executive session got canceled?
Not needed.
Not needed at this stage. Awaiting further information for us to deal with.
There was an email from town council the other day which made it pretty clear there was nothing to talk about, so.
There was further work going to be done.
Yeah, and she's waiting on.
She's waiting on more information from the parties she wanted us to talk about.
Okay, understood. Thank you for explaining that.
Great, so we have a motion.
Second.
Second, any other discussion? All in favor? Thank you all. Thank you, gentlemen. Nice job tonight.
Once again, you covered a lot of stuff.